Poland and now staying in Paris.
Yeah, well, I mean, I've lived in Los Angeles, I've lived in Mexico, in Pologne, in London, and now I'm in Paris and back in Poland too.
And now, introduce this
and so
website.
last year, over the years, I have occasionally, I teach in different schools. I've taught around the world. And I do it when I have some time or I'm interested. So last year, I taught in FEMIS, in the documentary section. And it was a very interesting experience. And what I want to do is I just want to show you a little segment of an experiment we did with the students in class, okay? And I think, I won't say anything else about it, but we designed a website, and I'll just show you this so that you will sort of get an idea of what I'm talking about. Now, in this class, we had, I'll explain a little bit more about FEMIS later, but we had workshops, and we had the filmmakers who were actually who were there to direct films, and then we had workshops, and we had a laboratory for everyone to be able to make the films they wanted to make. And this, I think this film I'm going to show you now is one of my favorite films. It was done in a lab, and it was done on a cell phone. And was done by a group of students who were not necessarily directing students.
Please.
Ça tourne.
Bonjour mesdames et messieurs, excusez-moi de vous déranger, j'aimerais vous poser une question simple. Pensez-vous qu'en temps de crise, la violence puisse être une solution pour obtenir des changements? Monsieur, qu'est-ce que vous en pensez? Non? Vous pensez pas? C'est pas une bonne solution. Madame? Ne vous inquiétez pas, ce ne sera pas diffusé.
C'est privé,
c'est pas grave, c'est pas grave. Non, non, non.
Vous respectez pas les gens.
D'accord,
les gens veulent pas être filmés.
d'accord, ça avance. Bon, mesdames, est-ce que vous avez entendu la question? Oui, vous avez entendu la question?
Oui, j'ai entendu.
Qu'est-ce que vous en pensez?
Non, dans un pays démocratique, je pense pas, non.
Non, c'est pas une bonne attitude.
Après, par exemple, comme le canal Umi, oui, pourquoi pas. Faire avoir des changements, pourquoi pas.
D'accord.
Malheureusement.
Vous voulez pas vous exprimer? Non, c'est pas grave, c'est pas qu'il pas.
Ça peut être une solution, mais la violence n'est jamais une bonne solution.
Pourquoi vous pensez pas des fois si ça peut être...
Ça peut être une solution, mais c'est jamais une bonne solution.
Enfin, l'idée c'est de faire trouver quelque chose. Le dialogue c'est mieux. Quoi.
Voilà, il me semble.
Vous avez entendu la question?
Oui, j'ai entendu la question.
Et vous ne souhaitez pas vous
Si je peux répondre par un mot, moi je pense jamais.
Jamais. Ah, c'est une demande. Très bien. On descend? Encore? Monsieur? Excusez-moi, est-ce que vous avez entendu la question?
Oui.
Qu'en pensez-vous?
De quoi?
De la question si la violence peut oui ou non être une solution.
La violence est toujours une solution pour arriver à ses fins.
Et est-ce que vous pensez que ça peut être une solution adaptée à une situation de blocage comme celle que l'on connaît?
Dans quel pays, dans quel temps, dans quel...
Disons de manière générale, même si c'est quelque chose qui a fait ses preuves, enfin même si la violence...
Je ne comprends pas le sens en fait de la question.
En fait c'est une question un peu arbitraire.
Oui, mais c'est parce que toute révolution s'est faite dans la violence jusqu'à présent. C'est-à-dire historiquement, voilà, la violence fait partie des grands changements sociaux. Donc, quel est le sens de votre question exactement? Est-ce que vous reliez ça à la situation française ou
Pareil, en...
Je parle.
Bon, c'est pas grave. Désolé de ne pas pouvoir approfondir.
Ouais, ben, je suis désolé.
Non, c'est pas grave.
Salut jeune homme, bonne journée.
So this film, for me, is a really great example of something that will be that works because it's about what's going on in the reality around us. It poses a question at the very beginning, which I'm interested in cinema du réel, in reality cinema, and every film must have a question before the filmmaker can start making a film, and this begins with a question. And there's the drama of how will people react to this question. Now, in order to do this, I mean, it seems like a very simple exercise, but in fact, it's very difficult for students to do this because they have to confront reality. They have to be able to make themselves stupid in a way. They have to go into this subway and they have to shoot with a camera that's a little phone camera and not hide behind a big camera. So they are exposing themselves. And for me, these are the most important qualities of a good documentary filmmaker, is to be able to expose yourself and confront reality without being afraid to confront it, because most people, in fact, hide behind cameras. I know that's kind of a strange thing to say, but even in my life, a lot of times it's easier to be behind a camera because then you're in a safe position. But with this little phone camera they were shooting with, they're exposing themselves because they don't have this gun between themselves and the world in front of them.
Et une des conditions, c'était un seul plan, one shot.
Exactement. And this was one of the things that we had to do. And different students chose different ways to solve this, but there's a choreography to this. There's a movement, and there's a story. There's a beginning, middle, and end. And sometimes it works, and sometimes it doesn't. What's interesting to me, as a person who teaches occasionally, and in the context of this seminar, is that we must have the students confront reality. And if they don't do that, I mean, let me explain something about FEMIS. And I am not against FEMIS. I had a very interesting experience, but it is a state school. There are a few thousand students that try to get in every year. Out of those few thousand students, they choose 40 students. The administration, the teachers, have a vested interest for these students to do well. So they baby the students in a lot of respects. And the students they don't learn how to confront reality because they are there because they are the best that France has to offer. And this is the other side of capitalism, which is, I'm not a big fan of capitalism, but this is the other side of capitalism, which is dangerous. I know this happened in Poland when we had state film schools. There was a vested interest by the administration and by the political powers to make sure that the students they choose are going to be the winners. And I noticed that in the school, in FEMIS, there was a problem because there's a hierarchy. At the top is the director, and everything else is below that. And what happens is that the directors are they're sucking the tit of the school, you know what I mean? Because what they're doing is they are allowed to be prima donnas. What I was interested in is having students who are not directors to make films. When Jean proposed I teach a class in Geneva this year, what was interesting to me is that the students who I'm going to work with are not film students. And that's very interesting to me because it's like, you know, emotionally, when people say, I have to go to a film school and teach, I say, oh, shit. These people have been thinking about cinema, they want to go to film festivals, and they already have all this long, long list of things that they want to accomplish with films. But when you confront someone who doesn't really care about cinema that way, but they have something to say, that's much more exciting. It's like finding, like somebody in the banlieue, some poor person who has a great talent, but who doesn't really understand what they want to do, and they discover they want to make cinema. That's what excites me. And this is a critique of film schools. There's this desire. It's like rock and roll used to be. Everybody wanted to be a rock and roll singer. Well, now everybody wants to be a filmmaker. And a lot of the students at FEMIS, and they told me this themselves, they said, well, I don't really care about cinema du réel. I don't care about the other kind of cinema because I want to go to Cannes. I don't care about this other stuff. They didn't even want to come into the meetings to do this work that I was doing because it was beneath them. They already were thinking about money, getting laid, sex, drugs, and rock and roll, and this kind of thing. But in fact, this is the most boring kind of student. And I don't think everybody has to be that way, but we have to, as a person who's interested in teaching, because I enjoy the humanity, I enjoy people. My goal is to try to get involved with people so they look at things differently, and they don't just want to make films because that you make a film. The form follows the function, and that's the most important thing for me. Form follows function. but they think the other way. And if you think about that, you can see what kind of mistake that is.
Comment définir le territoire idéal d'une école de cinéma, d'un lieu de formation en matière de cinéma?
It's a difficult question.
Yeah.
I think that well, let me answer in my own kind of way. Okay. I think that film schools need to address two things. They need to address aesthetics, and they need to address history, the history of cinema. And what I mean by that is that, because this is one of your questions later on, but I'm jumping a little ahead. One of the necessities of film schools, and I went to an art school. I was not trained in cinema, but I know many people who have not studied cinema who know they learn how to make cinema and they're good at it. But I think that at this stage in the game, one of the necessities for film schools is to teach the history of cinema, because a lot of young people don't know the history of cinema. And I'm not talking about going that far back. I'm talking about anything before 10 years ago is forgotten about. And that is because we live in a corporatized kind of culture, in a culture where people are just paying attention to just making money as quickly as possible, and a lot of history is forgotten. So if we start teaching them the old cinema, the cinema of the Italian neo-realist, and show them how they can bring those sensibilities into their own filmmaking style and thinking and philosophy, not just to promote the state, not just to promote how great Switzerland is, for instance, or how great the Swiss system is, but to critique the system by using these old techniques. And this is where I think the two can come together. That's interesting.
Et la technique?
Technique, like I said, form follows function. So I think that one of the things about FEMIS, and in fact, in your school, compared to other places I've seen and been to where I taught, you have great equipment. You have the latest equipment. You have things that other people only dream of having. And this kind of having this equipment kind of defines a certain kind of technique. I mean, the biggest enemy of documentary cinema is this. It's the microphone, because everybody can pretend they can do an interview, but it's not. There's much more to making a film than just the sound. And I mean, even the technique of how you interview people, it's something that people should study in cinema schools. Because in a way, they're journalists. You know, I mean, let's face it. A documentary filmmaker, in a way, is a journalist. So you must learn, you know, the forms of journalism: who, how, where, when, why, all those kind of rules before you go on and you can make a film. So all that is part of the technique of making films that needs to be learned in order to be able to make a film. And people forget about that because it's so easy to think that you know how to ask a question, or to confront someone with a microphone, because it's an aggressive act to confront someone with a microphone. And a lot of people, I see this all the time, young filmmakers use that as a technique to hide behind and to kind of be aggressive. But take the microphone away and try to tell a story. You know, if you watch films, any kind of films, Hollywood films, independent films, any kind of films, one thing you should always consider and think about is what happens when you turn the sound off and there's no music. Is there a movie? Is there a structure? What is the music doing to the film? And this is one of the rules of cinema du réel, is that music is a killer of great scenes. People put music in order to make everything move forward. But you take the sound away, you take the music away, and you just have the natural sounds, you will see whether the film can work or not. And you will see the weakness of the structure of the film. And this is part of this whole idea of working with technique. It's more complicated, but I'm just sort of simplifying it for you.